Welcome back to the Finger Wag. What? Again, welcome back to the Finger Wag podcast. I am your host, Gideon Hertz. I am here after a win with Jake Foote. What's up, Jake?
Not much, Gideon. Feeling good today. Food tastes a little better. Air is a little fresher on mornings after the Hoyas win, and guys got a big one last night.
Yeah, they did. It was looking a little sketchy there for a bit in the first half, but credit to the Hoyas, who are definitely, I think we can say, under the weather. I think as a group, we got some guys that seem to be fighting it. We'll talk about it, but it is always better to talk after a win than a loss. As I always say, winning is better than losing.
100%. And, we needed it. Players needed it. Team needed it. Fans needed it. Have a good chance to get this thing back on the tracks just in time for Vince's return. And, you still got to take care of business on Saturday, but season's not over yet.
Season is not over yet. We are going to spend most of our time talking about the Marquette game today and then maybe doing a little bit of a preview for Xavier. We have not talked since the St. Peter's game. I'll be honest, I don't really want to talk about the St. Peter's game, but I think we probably should just to do our due diligence there. Of course, the Hoyas win, I guess. It is a win, counts as a win. 76-68 in overtime against St. Peter's, who are 4-5 on the year with wins against Fairleigh Dickinson, UMass Lowell, Canisius. Love that Canisius game. Georgetown pulls it out in the end. It was a little touch and go there. Anything of relevance that you take from that St. Peter's game, or is that just like you got the win, move on?
Given this year, you just got to move on. But I think there's maybe something to take in years future that we have to take these bye games seriously. I tweeted it, but in the 5 bye games we've played this year, we're 0-5 against the spread. We've missed the number by a combined 52 points.
Oof.
We've won the game by more than 10 points farther from our largest lead in 3 of those 5 games, I believe. So you had a chance to just basically do your job, win all those games comfortably, and all of your advanced metrics right now, whether that's KenPom or the actual more important one being net, would look a lot nicer if you just did your job in those games. But at the end of the day, you've won the 5 in front of you. That St. Peter's game was about as bad as we can play, but it's not something that you're going to look back in a couple months and say, we have a quad 4 loss on our record. And I think you just burn the tape and move on.
Yeah, the metrics matter, obviously, especially if you're a bubble team. The net matters, but what matters more is not having bad losses on your resume. And so, as frustrating as it is, and it is frustrating, and Cooley, I think, continues to be a KenPom terrorist by just sort of not putting their foot down in these bye games. But most critical is making sure that you win those games. You don't have bad losses on your resume. For the most part, Georgetown still does not have a bad loss on their resume, though. That Dayton loss is somewhere between a okay loss and a bad loss, I would say. We'll see where Dayton ends up. But based off of the way Marquette looked yesterday and the way that Marquette looked at Dayton, it's making me question Dayton a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Dayton is kind of teetering in that quad 2 zone. They're at 75th in the country. If for any chance they got above 50, that becomes a quad 1 loss. I just doubt that happens. But they seem to be doing enough of their job that they're not close to 101, which would make that quad 3, which is what you really want to avoid.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't even blame Capital One for that one because they were in McDonough, and even though McDonough itself wasn't that full, but collectively as a squad, they have to show up in those games more than they do. Malik is a big culprit. In his in the 6 real games we've played, his net rating is around plus 17. In the 5 bye games we've played, his net ratings around -8.
Mm,
He's getting his like, not only is he not playing great, he's in some case scenarios, and like in the St. Peter's game, he's getting his butt kicked. And
yeah.
for a kid that should be one of the best 2 or 3 players in most gyms he's in, that's a game you should just totally be in control of and dominate. So, a little discouraging on that end, but, I'm not stressed out about it. They didn't lose, which is not the end of the world, and they moved on, and they obviously regrouped in time to have a good performance last night.
And we found out yesterday, kind of before the Marquette game, that guys are dealing with some illness. So the Big East, if folks hadn't seen, the Big East is now mandating, I think, teams to release player availability reports before the games. So we're going to get official player status reports, and as is want for Georgetown, the very first player availability report reveals to us that KJ Lewis was questionable, Langston Love questionable, Isaiah Abraham questionable. I think there was one other who was questionable on that list.
Shem,
Shem.
Shem.
Yeah. Um, all of those guys, it seems, got a little bit of a bug going around the team, and some reports saying that KJ was even dealing with it on the St. Peter's against the St. Peter's game. You could definitely tell that there were some guys that were feeling it last night. KJ, one of them. We'll talk about that. But, not an excuse, but an explanation of sorts that, this team is maybe not feeling 100%. And that really doesn't matter for the schedule. They've got to go win these games because they really have no other choice. But, God, Georgetown cannot catch a break, man.
Yeah, unfortunate timing given that they're already really shorthanded. And anytime they lose a guy as good as KJ on both sides of the ball, really there's no replacing that in the aggregate. They did a pretty darn good job yesterday, but he's and on most nights he's going to be kind of the straw that stirs the drink. Obviously, he was sick yesterday. I had heard things during the week that he wasn't doing too well, that they they were trying to get him up to speed, but he was going to be on a pitch count no matter what. And yeah, it was obvious pretty much from the jump, I think, with him that he didn't have his legs.
Mm.
There were a couple moments where he basically a transition moment where he beat the guy to the rim and didn't even get anything on the layup, and that's a play that he finishes 10 times out of 10 if he's healthy. He definitely chose to settle for jump shots in a few case scenarios where he didn't want to attack the rim, and in those times, those jump shots made it about halfway to the rim. So I feel for the kid because it he got out there and he still played hard and he still made a pretty significant difference on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he
Uh,
did.
but uh, but credit to the rest of the guys, specifically Jeremiah and Langston, really stepped up and gave you a shot.
Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of a recap here, but I will say, if you told me even a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or right after the Clemson game, if you said that Georgetown would be going into Marquette basically without KJ, but also without Vince, without DHS, and a couple of guys who are less than 100%, I would say, well, guess we start 0-1. But they
Yeah, I'd
pulled it
agree.
out.
Yeah, at the end of the Clemson game, it looked like there was 5 viable players, and 3 of those were Vince, DHS, and KJ. But we also, between then and now, we've also gotten to see what Marquette was for 3 more weeks, and they're not good.
They are not good. Um,
We
I
caught them at a good time, though.
Yeah, maybe they'll turn things around. I'm not sure. Let's do a quick game recap, relive this one. My first note of the game that I wrote down was the play-by-play guy, Connor Onion. Had no idea who that was, but apparently there is a play-by-play guy named Connor Onion. Love
I have
that.
not heard of him either, but sounds like some disciple of Bill Raftery.
I I think he might have changed his name just for that. Uh, KJ out, starts on the bench. Jay Will gets the start ahead of him. Obviously, we talked about him being sick. That was pretty significant news, and it sort of solidified right away that KJ was going to be less than 100%, and I would say he was about as close to 0% as you can get and still play. So shout out to him for just getting out there and actually making a little bit of a difference on the defensive end, as you said. They start with a really nice high pick and roll, with Mac hitting Julius on the short roll, then a cut from Isaiah Abraham on the baseline. I noted this because Julius continues to be great in that short roll situation and finding cutters um, off of off of that high pick and roll action, and he's just getting more and more comfortable with the ball in that position.
100%. I think it's worthwhile to note just because, in the first 6 to 8 minutes of this game, we didn't have a lot going in the half court, but that play, the first play of the game, and basically for the final 30 minutes of the game, it was pretty obvious that the key to unlocking them was just getting Julius the ball.
Yeah,
And they were giving it to him, or Marquette was pressuring the ball handler, surrendering that short roll entry pass, and Julius, yes, he's been such a great passer out of that short roll, but we'll talk about it, I'm sure. In the second half, he started taking that ball and looking to score.
yeah,
And yeah, he was awesome. Just we're gonna gush about him, but that was the key yesterday. Was the minute anytime we got him the ball, everything was unlocked.
yeah. Then things started going downhill a little bit. It started with a legit, I think this is the first time I've ever actually seen this called in a game, 5-second call against Jay Will, who picks up his dribble and just gets absolutely no help. They called it as an obvious 5-second call, but they gave it like they usually give that one like 6, 7, 8 seconds. And I think they just like no Georgetown players were flashing to the ball. So the ref said, well, we got to call this. That
Yeah,
was not great.
not great. Mac kind of ran away from him, which you don't want. But at the same time, and this is just from years of playing against Marquette, if you are going to turn the ball over against Marquette, dead ball
Dead
turnover,
ball. Yep.
not the end of the world. Like,
Yep.
go set your defense and make them beat you in the half court. They want to score out in transition. And I do think, we cleaned it up offensively in the last 30 minutes, turning the ball over. But it was a theme of the game that Marquette did not get many transition opportunities.
Yeah. They were getting some easy baskets in the half court, which was
Yep.
not encouraging. And at the same time, Georgetown missed, I counted 9 layups in the first 12 minutes. A couple of those there were fouls called on them, so they do end up getting points, but these are bunnies that they just looked like they were not ready to play. I also do think maybe there was something going on with that basket because in the second half, Marquette started smoking layups. I don't know. That deserves a little bit more investigation, but 9 layups in the first 12 minutes that they just completely missed.
Yeah, I noted it, and I was very discouraged by it, mostly
It was
because
awful.
Marquette doesn't protect the rim. They haven't
Yeah.
all year, and if you get the ball in those positions, you really have to take advantage against them. It's Julius missed one, or maybe two. Langston missed one, but they were fouled. On the one Langston miss, he definitely probably should have finished. That number might be a little padded because Fort had about 4 volleyball tips to himself on one possession.
Yeah, there were
Um,
3 or
but yeah,
4 on
there
that one.
there were baskets out there to be scored, not only in the beginning, but throughout the rest of the game. And it was annoying in the beginning of the game because they weren't totally capitalizing.
Uh, at the I think it was the under 8, they go to the huddle and you hear coach say, "The only way they can beat us is if we help them," which brutal, but frankly true. I just wanna take a second to say how unimpressed I am with Marquette, and yikes.
Yeah, I was shocked when Cooley said that because I was like, man, we're getting our ass kicked.
Yeah,
And we weren't totally
they were
physically
not
ready for
settled at
it.
that point.
Yeah, we weren't physically ready for it. Our guards were getting pushed around a little bit. We weren't finishing around the basket. We were playing man-to-man defense, and we were allowing dribble penetration to the rim. Nigel James was breaking us down pretty easily, and I felt like a lot of things were not going right. And when Cooley said that, I was like, man, he really thinks that little of Marquette. But he was right. They made a couple of shots in the minutes that followed, and then it felt like a cascade kind of the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have. Right after that, Caleb picks up his 3rd foul. Continues to be a little bit of an issue with Caleb trying to challenge for those late rebounds. that he picks up fouls on. Georgetown then fumbles the free throw rebound out of bounds, gives Marquette another free possession. Fort and KJ just bobble it. It was a little bit of a low point. Then they come back. Jay Will makes a layup. They give up two and ones, but then Julius just completely kind of takes over. And one starts with an and one, really, really nice finish off great footwork. They go to zone at this point, and zone, they get a shot clock violation. Julius three off of a really nice little inverse split action where Love dives and Julius pops. And then right down the other way, Julius creates a turnover with really a nice deflection, quick hands down low. I've been impressed with how well he gets into passing lanes. We talked about how good he's been defensively as a rim protector. Surprisingly so. We didn't really expect that, but I've noticed him getting into passing lanes with some really quick hands that's been impressive. Nice little give and go with Julius to Jay Will for a floater that officially gives Georgetown the lead briefly. They made, at that point, 7 of 8 field goals, so the offense was started to get going, and Julius was involved either assisting or scoring on, I believe, all of them. He really was just awesome this entire game, but to end that first half, he was great. It closes with Love on a really nice layup off of a attacking a closeout, and then the three to end the half. And Georgetown goes into the half up for 37-33 after playing 15 minutes of just uninspired basketball. They get it together, and you have to commend them for the way that they ended that half.
Yeah, I have a couple of notes that I just wanted to touch upon in this stretch, which
Yeah.
ended up being the most important stretch of the game. One, they were down 24-16 at the under 8 break. In those first 12 minutes of the game, Marquette had scored 24 points on
Yeah.
17 possessions. They were carving them up, more than 1.4 points per possession. It would have been Marquette's best offensive game of the entire season. Cooley went to the zone, one, which I think was really important, that you just made Marquette operate out of the perimeter and you didn't allow their guards to just break you down one-on-one, which is what they want to do. I've mentioned it before, but they have a weird shot diet. They really want to get their guards to the rim. That's kind
Yeah.
of how they do everything. And the zone prevented that mainly because Shaka doesn't run a whole lot against the zone.
Yeah.
Secondly, and I want to touch upon this later when we dive into takeaways, but you could sense that physically we were missing something a little bit,
Hmm.
and Cooley went to the Fort Julius pairing together, and it allowed I love Fort when he's just a power forward
Hmm.
and he can just be a ball magnet, and it's just his two jobs are just be a secondary rim protector, and on the offensive glass just go hunt the basketball. And when they put those two out there together against whatever Marquette puts as a front line, which is some combination of Caden Hamilton and Ben Gold, who are both pretty soft, we just feasted down low physically.
Yep.
I'll discuss that more because I have some statistics that back that up. But I think that was the absolute correct string to pull if you were Cooley to try to change the game. And then Julius deserves a ton of credit. He definitely offensively took over this game. But I do want to give Mac a little bit of credit.
Mm.
I hated his first 12 minutes. He had 2 or 3 junk turnovers that didn't need to happen. He definitely wasn't embracing the physicality, which we've talked on ends that he needs to do. It's the Big East. But he came in after he sat, and the first possession, he took a junk elbow jumper. And I was yelling at the TV. I'm like, oh, that's not the shot. And he made it.
Yeah.
And then I think 2 possessions down after that, it was a scramble play where off an offensive rebound, they kicked it to the right on him, and he was on Ben Gold, and it looked like he had a 3, didn't take it, head faked it. Gold was allowed to close that space, and he just looked down Gold and he took it again,
Yeah.
and he made it. On both shots, I was thinking like, geez, that's not the shot we want, but the lead goes from 11 to 5 or 10 to 4, just like that on 2 kind of garbage makes by Mac. And that's what you need of him, even when he's not himself and he's in a rut, you need him to basically just make one or two of those, and you can sense it immediately. The kid immediately gets himself out of a rut,
Yep.
starts playing under control, and he had him and Jeremiah together. They played well off each other pretty much for the first time this year. They were in total control of the offense the rest of the game. We got good looks for the next 25 minutes.
Yep.
But I do think those two shots that Mac made, while I wouldn't advise seeking those shots, they were very, very big to swing the pendulum back in our favor.
And you're absolutely right. Those are shots that, regardless of how he is playing, he needs to make. And it's the shots that the past week or so have not gone down for him, and
No.
why he's been a little bit, under what the expectations were. I'll add one other where Mac on the fast break with, I forget who's with him, but the Marquette defender just never commits
Gets
to
out of the
him,
way.
and he
Yeah.
just gets an easy layup. That's a play that to me, he was in total control of that the whole way, and I like the way he moved on that, because I could very easily see him, if he's not reading the game right, throwing that ahead and just playing directly into the Marquette player, but he played it perfectly.
Yeah, that was crazy bad defense.
It's crazy bad
One, they got out
defense.
of his way too. He was
Yeah.
with Langston,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
if there was any scout out there, you'd literally say, make this kid who has no knees finish in the open court.
Yeah.
But Mac did make good decisions in transition. He made good decisions around the basket, especially in the second half. He made the layups that he took where he was basically ushered all the way to the rim. But he had a couple plays too where he brought it all the way to the rim and made the correct skip pass.
Yeah.
Most notably the dagger to Caleb at the end of the game.
Yep. Great play.
And he's he's pretty volatile, but when things are going his way, he plays really well. It's just when things don't go his way, it can spiral. But he's he's still improving, and it's his performance against real teams, against high major competition this year is miles better than it was last year.
Yeah. To start the second half, and to your point about Cooley pulling the right levers, he goes with Fort over Caleb to start the second, which I think was absolutely the right call. Fort looked way, way, way better. Caleb ended up finishing the game really well, but I thought it was smart to go to Fort right out of the break to kind of capitalize on that end of the half run. And he was just physically too much for Marquette, which was nice to see.
Yeah, I think Caleb was really good in the second half. I'm going to be
Yeah.
very complimentary of how he played and how tough he was in the final 15 minutes of the game.
Yep.
But I agree. At that moment, you could not have sat Fort down. He was such a difference maker on the offensive glass and defensively, even if he did get a little lost in the zone at times. And that was the major advantage we had against these guys, was just they didn't have anybody that could handle the size and activity of Julius nor Fort when they played together.
Yeah. Noted a little flex action that they tend to run this early in second halves, where they try and get that Julius Seal deep in the paint. He gets fouled to start the second, but I noted this because he was really, really battling, and just he and he said after the game he knew he had a size advantage. He played like it, which is something that we really haven't seen a ton of. He's been great so far this year. He's been better than expected for sure, but he was really physical with Marquette in this one, and that to me is really encouraging. Then he gets rocked in the face coming down the other way, and this is the one that gets reviewed. I don't know what your thought is. That looks like clearly flagrant to me. They usually try to look for if the elbow is going up versus out, and if it's going up, it's legal. I guess it's Julius in the cylinder, but like he got absolutely rocked.
I, d- I wouldn't have loved it if they called the flagrant,
All right, all right.
but I would have appreciated the offensive foul
It definitely was not a defensive foul.
before they let Hamilton lay it in for 2 points and one.
Yeah. Um, Ford had a really, really nice lefty finish off of a
And
little baseline drive that was, just anytime he puts together more than just a putback dunk or a catch and finish, it's nice to see because he's got a little bit of that. It doesn't look foreign. It doesn't look clunky. I think and it's encouraging for his long-term development for sure.
It was an important play too, just because we were only up 3 at the
Yeah.
juncture. That possession was a pretty junk offensive possession, which I imagine all that end up in Fort trying to break somebody down off the dribble are. But he made a tough little finish, and it kept them at 5, and that was kind of the theme, that you just kept them at this arm's length until he made some shots down the stretch.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with how Ford played. I think he played within himself. He did exactly what they need him to do.
To your point that you made in the first half, Julius starts looking for the bucket a little bit more off of the pick and roll. He has a really, really nice feed from Malik, I believe. Maybe it was Jay Will here. Gets an easy dunk. Caleb's back in the game at this point, and really, I think this was the switch that flipped for Caleb. He
Yeah, the
almost
save.
gives it up on the press, dives on the floor to save it to Mac, ends with a layup on the other end that he gets just off of a secondary transition. And from that point on, he was great. It looks like he just got physically into the game there. And you know, he avoids the turnover. It was a really nice play, and he ends it with a lefty layup. And I thought from that point on, he was very solid.
Yeah, I think Caleb stunk in the first half. There's no other way around it. He he has to get out of the habit of picking up 2 or 3 junk soft fouls in the beginning of the game, because
Yeah.
they cannot afford to sit him for long stretches. They got lucky that they were able to pair Fort and Julius together for so long, and Julius didn't get in foul trouble,
Mm.
or else they would have been really shorthanded in the front court, especially with Isaiah being sick. But he found a switch after this play where he started to just really embraced the physicality. He won a couple of big rebounding wars. When they play that 2-3 zone, they ask a lot of him rebounding, and it's
Hmm.
difficult to rebound space rather than a man. And he did it well yesterday. He generated an offensive rebound later in the first half, and the only reason I'm saying this is because it will never get included in the timeline, because it resulted in him getting a top of the key 3-point look, and he
Yep.
missed it. But for me, it was emblematic of how much activity he found, that he just started to get his hands on loose balls and just bringing down tough rebounds, and it was important for them. So I want to just give credit to him. He played like a man, like a grown up the last 12 minutes, and the group needed it.
Yep, absolutely. KJ still giving it a go, smokes that layup. That to me looked like, all right, let's put KJ on ice or in a warm bed, get him some tea. He stayed in for a little bit after that, despite smoking that layup, and somehow Langston goes down. They give up a 5-on-3. Marquette pops a transition three that is not even close. Gold tips it in, and you're just like, let's let's shut KJ down, maybe.
Yeah, that was the play I referenced earlier where it was pretty obvious he didn't have his legs.
Yeah.
There's a play, I think, 2 or 3 possessions afterwards, where transition moment, Jeremiah is bringing the ball up the middle, KJ's on the right wing, and this is the other one I referenced, but normally he'd be a heat-seeking missile right at the rim, 2 points and 1 going to the line, and he stopped at the 3-point line to take the air ball. And at that point, I think it was obvious to everyone in the building, Cooley included, that it was just that you had to find alternatives.
Yeah. Um, they had after that the really, really nice baseline out of bounds play. E- A great play by Caleb out of the trap. Jay Will inbounds it. They they're prepared for Marquette to trap. Marquette traps off of every single out of bounds immediately. Caleb pivots back to the baseline, gets it to Jay Will, who has Julius sealed and Isaiah open on the weak side, and Julius gets the dunk. Just a really, really good heads up play and a great pass by Caleb.
Yeah, Caleb unlocked it. They got trapped in the corner in the first half on a similar play, and it was a
Yeah,
turnover. I don't totally know how designed it was, because
that was my question.
it looked like Caleb was stuck for a little bit. But Caleb's 6'7", pretty smart player. He was patient enough to get to pass behind the pressure. And then anytime you get the ball behind the pressure in a trap, you're going to have an odd man rush. And Julius made such a smart seal.
Yeah.
Jeremiah made a nice pass. 2 points, heading down the other way.
Julius gets called for what was a ridiculous offensive foul on a
Yeah,
little twist action.
this is where the officiating starts to get a little weird.
Yeah, weird officiating. The other reason I mentioned it is they've been running a little bit of twist action with Julius where he screens one side and then rescreens the other. I really like that action for Julius because it gets the ball handler into a nice into a nice space with Julius making decisions off of that. I'm interested in them running that more. I just noted it as I was watching the game that despite it being a BS foul call, I say keep running that.
And what I'd also add to that is they're slipping it,
Yeah,
or they're having Julius slip it, which is why it was so garbage that it was called. He wasn't even
right.
trying to make contact, if he made
Yeah.
any contact at all.
Yep.
But I love if a team shows pressure and shows like they're going to high hedge a big man, it should be every single time. It should be a little slip to Julius, and Julius catches the ball 15 feet from the hoop with total freedom to operate. Dribble, pass, shoot,
Yeah.
post it. Like I said earlier, it felt like that was the key to unlock it. Any sort of action that gets him the ball in those positions is an action I'm going to be a fan of.
Yeah, you get 4-on-3 with Julius at the with the ball at the top of the key. And I like the twist element, particularly your point against Marquette, or a team that puts high pressure, because that little twist just makes that pressure come up a little bit higher. So there's just a little bit more space there. And Julius, as we've said, is so good and getting better, which is, I think, the scary thing with the ball in that zone. It's really,
Yeah, and if you show that action, that pressure, and you basically give it away early, it allows the point guard, whoever it is, to basically just slow down, take a back dribble, and make the easiest little entry pass there, which is really what you want. You really just want the decision making process for your guards to be easy. Yeah, I I like the action, and Julius got the short end of the stick.
yeah, just an awful call. Marquette cuts it to 3 on what I thought not as bad as the Julius call, but a pretty bad block call on Jay Will, who think A, he's in legal guarding position, and B, the offensive player pretty clearly pushes off and extends the elbow. Tough call for me, but those calls are generally 50-50. I just feel like whenever there's an extension of that arm, it should be called the right way.
Agreed. I think it was a coin flip play that looked worse on the offense because Ross extended his arm after the contact. At this moment, I think it was more just like a tension response
Yeah.
that I was like, man, we should be up 11, and now we're up 3 after Ross makes 2 free throws, and we can't get a break. It's like this is same old Georgetown. So I was more nervous than anything there, but they responded.
Yeah. They come back down and Julius gets fouled. I don't remember this one, but you wanted to talk about it. Tell me about
Yeah,
this.
I think this was my favorite play of the game.
Love it.
So play after Chase Ross gets his 2 free throws, we kind of ran some slow developing play that similar to the one where Julius was called on the
Mm,
foul, where he caught the ball about 16 feet away from the hoop, dead center of the court. And it was a moment in the game where, like I said, you're almost relinquishing this lead. You're only up 3. This is an extremely critical offensive possession to get a good look. And Julius, one, demanded the ball at the top of the
mm.
key, took the ball, and he faced up. I think it was Parham. I think they were playing small at this point, and just 2 dribbles to the right, got his back into him, rolled over his right shoulder, tried to
Yeah.
beat him left to the hoop. Parham brings his arms through his arms, and they call a foul. Now it ends up being 1-1. You could argue whether he was trying to pass it to the corner to Langston or shoot it over his shoulder there, but it didn't matter. He made both free throws. And for me, what I was most excited about in that moment was it looked like Julius understood that he was the best player in the gym,
Mm.
and that he wasn't going to shy away from any contact. The ball was in his hands. Everything runs through me. Get on my back. We're scoring this time down. And if he assumes that personality on a consistent basis, which he has for the most part in the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
offensively, the kid's going to be a monster.
He's getting there. He might he might be monster adjacent. I think there's the exciting thing is I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of upside still left with him, but he's already looking very comfortable. And you're right about that play that it really settled them down. They go on a little bit of run after that that ends with the Caleb three in the corner to make it 11. And that to me, like 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left. That felt like it was in hand at that point. That was the dagger. But Julius, every time they needed a bucket, he was either facilitating, was involved, or got them a shot. And yeah, I think just to jump to big takeaways here, I think the first big takeaway's gotta be juice.
Yeah, top of my list too. You know, it seemed like he found a little something in the Dayton game offensively, and he's parlayed that in stacked performances. He's the type of guy right now that I think it might look different against, really physical big men. He wasn't the same versus Uday. He had his moments versus Visar, but it wasn't dominant by any means. But when he plays inferior competition, or at least competition that struggles with his size, he just dominates them, which is what he should be doing. And my hope for him is that he continues to never let himself fade out of these games or let the two guards, whoever they are, not get him the ball and kind
Yeah,
of freelance, because their offense in the half court is just so much better when it goes through him. And in the last 4 games, two of these were bye games. He's averaged 18 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 70% from the field,
yeah.
has made a few threes, and is 81% from the line. And he's made a few one-on-ones, which are critical that your big man is making. Just a really polished player, ahead of where I thought he was going to be on the offensive end. The footwork's really good. The hands are really good. The vision's really good. He's embracing contact. Like, I'm really not that worried about his making physically. If you keep that kid around for a couple of years, sky's the limit.
Yeah. Other big takeaways for you in this one.
So I do want to give another shout out to Jeremiah and Langston. Langston
Yeah.
was on that list of sick guys, and he was coughing in the post-game celebration videos. And he played really hard. And he, 10 points, 6 rebounds, made his free throws. He helped them. And then Jeremiah that's the best he's played on offense by a country mile. Him and Mac had not been good playing together up until that point, but I think they really helped each other handle Marquette's pressure. That they were both just always there for each other as an outlet, as a release valve. And Jeremiah certainly didn't shy away from the ball in bigger moments down the stretch. He seemed to want it in his hands, and he played well. And they're going to have this kind of Russian roulette thing of role players, where it doesn't need to be everybody every night, but they need some combination of Jeremiah, Langston, Fort, and Isaiah to bring it at a high level every night to put together a group of 5 or 6 guys that are really competitive. Now, this goes hand in hand, but I think the Cooley really pulled all the right strings in the final 28 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
I didn't totally love the game plan from the jump and the
Yeah.
scout. Like, I would have been daring Nigel James to shoot. He really wants to get to the rim. But he made the right decision switching to that zone. He made the right decision handling, or basically choosing, Jeremiah and Love over KJ and Isaiah. He made the right decision going to Julius and Fort at the time he did. They really had a good game plan for Chase Ross the entire game. They didn't let him get
Really
out in
did.
transition. They made him a good jump shooter. And I think he nailed all that, which were all kind of prerequisites to win.
Yeah, Chase Ross finishes with 4 points, just a complete non-factor in this game, and that was not one player taking him away. That was just defensive game planning and execution for sure.
Yeah, they made him a jump shooter against the zone. They kind of knew this. They knew that he wants to go to the left, but where he's special is out in the open court. And he's similar to KJ, where he turns guys over on his own and he becomes a one-man fast break. And they didn't get the chance to do that. Or Ross didn't. And Marquette themselves, they only scored 9 points off turnovers. They scored 0.78 points per possession in turnover sequences, which for them is just like an atrocity. That's typically their most efficient form of offense. And it goes to show you that not turning the ball over is a massive advantage, not only for your offense, but for allowing your defense to get set.
Yeah. Georgetown had dropped to number 2 in the nation in offensive turnover rate after the St. Peter's game. They're back up at number 1 now after this one, and it was really, I mean, they just completely cut Marquette's offense off at the knees by just being solid with the ball as they have been all year. Marquette really, really struggles in the half court and got absolutely nothing, very little in transition for sure. I want to talk a little bit about the Juice and Fort lineup because so before this game, actually before the St. Peter's game, you had put up some data on that looked at Fort as a true four and how Georgetown has looked with either Vince or Julius on the floor. We didn't look a lot at, and I wrote up a piece for the site, which I still think people should go look at if they haven't. We didn't look a lot at how Fort was playing with either Julius or Vince, though a little bit of the data shows that Vince and Fort was a really, really dominant defensive pairing. And but they go to it in this one. It worked really, really well against Marquette. I wonder if it's something that you think is worth looking at more and even to to the end of pushing Caleb to the 3 at times and playing going big as opposed to small, which they've done a lot of, and going Caleb for Julius a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is. And this was a point I've been trying to make in the past regarding Fort. It's unfair to grade him as
Totally.
this backup center when in reality he's supposed to be this kind of chaotic bench power forward that doesn't have a whole lot of responsibility, whereas, a center has about as much responsibility on the floor as anybody. And prior to the game, he playing with either Vince or with Julius, his numbers were kind. He was a plus 15 net rating when when he was paired with another center. Their rim percent defense was around 37%, which is elite. And the rebounding numbers were really good with him as a 4 too. So I think there's some promise there, especially with our current group, because I don't think spacing is a real premium. No matter
Mm,
what combination we put out, we're not going to shoot it that well. But injecting size and activity into this group does feed a little bit into that character that they had developed in the offseason where, we're tough, we're active, we're going to create extra possessions, we're going to block shots, we're going to rebound. And Fort, in some ways, is a pathway to that.
yeah.
Now, him and Julius were awesome together. They played 15 minutes together yet last night, and they were a plus 11. I do want to highlight a quick little stat here. With Fort on the floor, with Julius next to him, we offensive rebounded about 60% of our makes, which is insane. And opponents, Marquette, shot 41% at the rim. Now, in the 25 minutes that Fort sat, we only rebounded 20% of our makes
Mm,
compared to 60. And Marquette shot 70% at the rim. Now, I
mm,
don't think this was an indictment on Julius because I think a lot of that was guards getting walked down, but it was pretty evident when Fort was out there that he was actually defense and as a secondary helper. And the numbers, obviously very kind when you go plus 11 in 15 minutes, are now really, really kind
yeah.
over the entire season when Fort plays the 4. Nearly a plus 30 net rating, opponents shooting about 40% at the rim. We're getting 40% of offensive rebounds. Even the offense works, scoring
Mm,
1.27 points per possession. And again, I think that feeds into that spacing for this group's not the most needed thing, but second chances and getting fouled is.
yeah.
And Julius is such a luxury next to him because Julius can play on the perimeter, where basically Fort can just hide away in a dunker spot and stay out of the way. But yeah, I really liked the two of them together. I kind of liked Fort when he's not given any responsibility from the inception this year. And I really hope that they incorporate that once Vince comes back.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, yeah, it might have the makings of a real solid front court once Vince does return.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's worth continuing to look at while Vince is out, and something that deserves a real look even when Vince is back. And I think it's a lot to ask of a kid like Caleb, who has been sort of slotted in as the starting four all year. But I have a lot of faith in Caleb's ability to adapt to what is needed. I don't think it's a big switch that you make, but I do think, going really big with a front line of Caleb, Fort, Julius, I think gives you a lot of options offensively and defensively. Pair that with, you know, pick your guard, Mac, KJ, or even Love. I'll be honest, I've really liked Love over the past couple of games. I find that I want him on the floor more often than not. Not, just because I'm very confident that offensively he's going to make the right play, and that includes knocking down an open shot. I continue to think to like him. He's quietly scored double figures pretty much every time he's been out there and healthy, at least in the past couple of games. And I think that is not that's not a that's not a fluke. He is just a guy who can get you 10 points in a game on just smart plays and being able to knock down open shots.
Yeah, all of his Baylor teams were better offensively with him on the floor than off the floor. Now he was surrounded by probably some more talented guys than this group has, but the last 2 weeks he's made the right plays on that end. He obviously has the makings of a good shooter. He's looks like he's incrementally making steps on the defensive side.
Yeah.
What I've talked on end that I don't like the zone, but you can hide him in that
Yeah.
where he doesn't have to guard guards off the dribble all that much, which really worked out for them the other day. Yeah, I hope they keep letting him play into some confidence, into shape. They're gonna need him.
Yeah. Any other big takeaways for you before we look ahead to the next must win?
Uh, I would say, and I don't want to, extinguish the fire right now of some enjoyment from the win, but I would say not only is Marquette bad, but I think they're a good matchup for us.
Yeah.
They don't have a viable center rotation to either expose a Fort off the bench or to really stress out Julius.
Yeah.
Julius comfortably played 35 minutes without being in a lick of foul trouble. They want to turn you over and score off turnovers, but we protect the ball pretty well. It's probably what we do best right now. And offensively, they want to get all the way to the rim, like I've touched upon, and I don't think that's a real great recipe against us. Um, the teams that have carved us from mid range
Yeah.
and from just threes off extra passes. And Marquette doesn't. They're one of the worst teams in the country shooting both mid range and from three. And they just, I don't remember yesterday them punishing us from those areas at all, other than maybe that first 6 minute stretch where they hit a couple flurry threes. So they kind of we were able to play the game on our terms, definitely played into our advantages, which was Julius. And I'm somewhat concerned that in other games versus teams of maybe similar or better or similar to us in talent, that that it's not so easy to play into the way that we want to play. But it's a credit to Cooley because I think Cooley played that game on his terms.
100%. Um, Yesterday, Marquette, uh, on just under 5 out of 100 plays they executed from the mid range and were 0.45, so less than half a point per play on those, which is well below average. We've talked about just how the games that they've really struggled, the Dayton,
UN.
Miami, UNC, just feasted in the mid range, and really just nothing to speak of there for Marquette. And I agree with you. I said it a lot, but my God, Marquette is just not good. That's a
Not good, no.
It's a program that's in rough shape this year right now, and I'm with you. Like, it's a they don't stress you out. Maybe it's, the flip side of that is you needed a get right spot, particularly after that St. Peter's game that should have been like a nice, easy win, and it wasn't. You got guys who are sick, not feeling great. KJ's not there. Just having a getting right in a win on the road is something that you can definitely build on. So they've got a
Yeah.
little bit of momentum now going into their first home game this Saturday. Xavier. Talk to me about Xavier a little bit. What do you see in that
So
one?
Xavier's not that good. Creighton just beat him by 40. Although they've played a little bit better than that recently. They beat Cincinnati at home. They went to MT and they played Georgia tough and then beat West Virginia. But they're they're not really designed to be a great high major team. They're really like a mid-major all-stars. Now, their best player is a kid named Trey Carroll from Florida Atlantic. Has always been a good scorer, although in smaller usage and in smaller minutes. But he's really found an ability to be a three-level scorer for them pretty much. And he's scoring about 16 a game. And they don't really have a center. They
Yeah.
thought Anthony Robinson was going to be their center, who was a transfer from Virginia. They're playing him 13 minutes a game. He played 5 minutes in the Creighton game, and they were going to Papa Njai, who's a UNLV transfer, rather than him as their bench center. But what they've really gone to is a total commitment to playing five out. Now, the kid that they're playing at the center of the five out is, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Jovan Milicevic,
Mhm.
who was with Patino at New Mexico, albeit in a depth role. Now he wants to shoot. He doesn't want to go really around the rim, although he has some post up game to him. He's a little like almost like a fielder,
Yeah.
uh, which is not very complimentary, but he is an asset offensively, even though he shot 0 of 8 versus Creighton. Defensively, though, he's a total sieve. When Robinson, the aforementioned kid from Virginia, plays the five, they allow 59% field goal percentage at the rim, which is also not that great. When Milicevic is in, opponents shoot 70% at the rim, which is even worse than Supreme Cook numbers. Now, the way to beat them is basically attack them inside out. Creighton hit 16 threes, so it looks like a 3-point flurry, but Creighton also shot 22 of 30 from 2-point range against them.
Yeah.
They got absolutely whatever they wanted. And I think that bodes well for us offensively, given that you just scored 80 points on Marquette with basically nothing from the 3-point line. You're going to have to play through Julius. Julius is going to have to kick their front court's ass. You're going to hopefully KJ's right and we just get opportunities to get downhill. And I would like a lot of Fort and Julius again together, really challenge them on the offensive glass and just try to get as many easy baskets, as many free throws as possible. Now, defensively against them, like I said, they play five out. They are second in the country in assist rate and top 5 in the country in turnover rate. They're really going to pass. They want to shoot threes. They have next to no interest in shooting 2-pointers. And when they do, they've been awful, right around 310th in the country, both in 2-point percentage and in mid-range percentage. But they shoot the three well, around 36, 37%. And in the games that they've won, they've kind of gone unconscious. They hit something like 17 threes against West Virginia in their win.
Mm.
So the solution to beating them is, I think, pretty rudimentary. Make them, or just at least like you have to play connected on the perimeter with your defense uh, against their really 1 through 5, because their 5 is going to spread it out to the 3-point line and have to just force them off the 3-point line to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And hopefully, shot variance is in your favor, but you got to make shots difficult for them because the other way down, you should be able to generate good looks.
Yeah, it looks to me, just based off of what I've seen of them, which I haven't watched them a ton this year, but the numbers as well, is you just gotta run them off the three-point line. They're not great, as you said, at the rim. See here that they actually are in the 90th percentile and in frequency of mid-range shots. So they're taking a fair amount of mid-rangers, and they are god awful, as you said.
I think that's because again, their guards just have a hard time breaking people down off the
Yeah,
dribble. It's Malik Moore, Roddy Anderson, Allwright, and Allwright is shooting the lights out from three. Moore started strong, has really tapered off. Anderson started poorly, is starting to pick it up in a bench role as a scorer, but none of the three should strike fear in the guys you have. Even though I know we haven't played well defensively, especially on the perimeter, a pairing of Mac, Jeremiah, and KJ should comfortably handle that guard group. And even they're going to run a lot of initiating stuff with Borovichinen, who's their 6'8" wing that they also got from New Mexico. Now that might be the toughest cover, is just figuring out how you're going to guard the 3-4 combination there of Borovichinen and Carroll. But I think Caleb and Isaiah should be able to switch that and handle it on an island.
yeah,
I don't know. My hope is that you force them to try to you force them to these mid range shots. You force them to try to score 2-pointers rather than 3-pointers, and you should have the better Jimmys and Joes than them. You should be the tougher team. You should be the bigger, more physical team.
yeah. Run them off the 3-point line and make them beat you basically anywhere else.
Yeah, easier said than done
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully, guys have gotten home. We got some nice chamomile tea for KJ, and Langston got some sleepy time, all tucked in bed and giving it a little bit of a rest.
Yeah,
Getting
not the best turnaround, but
oh
Xavier's on the
no,
same
not
turnaround as you.
yeah,
So you just got to be ready to be the more physical team from the jump.
yep. Any last words, Jake, for before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I think this is a whole lot more fun to do when we win than when we lose.
Agreed. Let's keep doing
so
that. I'm
so
with
let's
you.
keep doing it. I will leave with the note that I've kind of been a little pessimistic at times over this stretch without Vince, and I felt like to keep your season alive, you probably needed to be 2-3 in the non-bye games without him to stay afloat. 3-2 would have been lovely, and you still might end up kicking yourself for losing that Dayton game. And had you won that, you'd be 9-2 right now, flying high. But they have a chance to really tread water, take care of the Xavier team, survive it, and then you bring Vince back for Showtime, and then you have a chance to go and win your 13 Big East games.
Yep, I'm with you. Just got to get through this stretch for sure.
And that center rotation, when you have the two of them, has a chance to be really good.
Yep,
When in I know in July that was what we were most concerned about, but Julius needed this stretch to play into himself.
he really. It is a silver lining for sure that Julius is way ahead of where we would have expected him at this point, and seems to just be getting better by the second. Frankly,
Yep. So beat Xavier.
beat
Let's do it.
Xavier, Hoya Saxa.
All right, Hoya Sax Gideon. Take care.